Hey, what's up, guys? I'm recording a new podcast. I haven't done this in a hot second, so bear with me. I'm gonna get the rust off with this one. Been very, very busy, and also been honestly, man, just processing a lot. Life's been kind of crazy, and I've been working on a book for about 3 years, and it's been kind of a insane undertaking. I have the habit of trying to put too much into one thing and to becoming very almost egotistical, honestly. um, Ego management has been a problem of mine my whole life, honestly. In fact, what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is first say hello. Always good to get on here and just share my thoughts. And the podcast has really been something that I anticipated on it being something I was doing more often, and hopefully I'll be doing more of this soon. As I get back into a regular schedule, I'm going to try to be more consistent. I may even start a new podcast because I feel the original vision, what I originally wanted to do with this was get into my story. This podcast is called My OCD Life because, the struggle of my life has really been kind of a secret battle within myself. I feel like we all have our own battles that we have to go through, and most people didn't realize that I have been struggling for years with something that people always, I think, have known me to be kind of a peculiar individual. I've been able to, for the longest time in my life, been able to channel in a lot of my anxieties and things that I've had to deal with in my personal development, but I've never really been very, very publicly open about it. And it's something, though, when you really go through a personal battle and you develop a way of looking at the world through overcoming certain things, and sometimes even just facing human nature, facing your own nature, facing your own humanity. It allows you to approach people in a way that I think sets you apart from other people. Your problems will either be the things that propel you in your life or the things that keep you back and hold you back, from really connecting with people. And even though I still feel like I have so much room for growth, I still feel like I'm just begun to tap into who the kind of person that I want to be in the world. I'm also very, very, I realize that there are things that I have to say that can help a lot of people. And so, I want to get into sharing my story more. And originally this podcast was going to be more of trying to share my story in like a story format with music and with a multimedia kind of thing. And, I'm kind of like Michael Jackson in a way that, like, he used to always be very, very big with his productions and stuff. And I always visualize that sort of ambitious artistic undertaking. And, before I know it, I'm trying to do so many different things, and then I'm just piled up with all this ambition. And then I realize that, I'm just a man with limited resources. And so I've had to kind of shrink down my ambitions for now. But I wanted to record today because today's Easter. And in my own life, I've witnessed something, within my own struggle with OCD and with other things. It's been a psychological battle, but there's this place where the psychological and the spiritual are very aligned. And in my own life, the confrontation with a lot of ways that we see spiritual things has really kind of played itself out in my own life. And it's what really makes me kind of a weird spiritual and religious person, is that in my own life I've been able to experience what works and what doesn't work, and my authenticity with really what makes me come alive and what I find represses me. It really defines the utility of everything that I have to say, because I'm constantly having to approach my own humanity, approach my own areas that I'm struggling, and work things out and find a perspective that really releases power and releases something in me. When I feel like there's a release, that's where I feel like I'm on the right track, because I feel the alignment of myself. I feel something come alive, and I feel like too often the domain of religious and spiritual belief, we don't feel that we have the place to bring our authenticity and questioning. Too often I think in Western religion, we're very into right belief, like have the theory right, have the formula right, and something's always not felt right with that. There's some sort of functioning that has to coincide with that, and when there's not right functioning, and there's supposed right belief, either my understanding of my belief or this belief is wrong, or it's being misunderstood, or there's being some sort of dysfunction there that I have to figure out. And I feel like in our current state of mental health in our country and really in the world, it coincides with a spiritual crisis, because if we don't feel at liberty of being able to release the potential of who we are and expand in the potential of who we are and who we know that we are. In my own life, I've almost felt like at times this person trapped underneath the surface, and a lot of my beliefs and a lot of my things that I've had to grow in is finding out what really releases who I am. And too often what we think is a release of ourselves isn't. Many times it's a short-term exercising of who we are. And when we begin to really understand that there is a way that we can operate in the world and operate, in our private lives, that demands our constant authenticity with our notion of what is true, and we're always developing our understanding of what is true, what is our correct relationship with everything and with ourselves, and it demands from us a certain surrender of, like, even as I'm talking, one thing that I'm really trying to work on is not to get ahead of my thoughts, to really be able to stay aligned with the task at hand, what I'm trying to communicate. And there's something about alignment. There's something about keeping myself from getting too out over here or getting distracted, and being able to keep myself in a flow. And we all have a different sense of self. We have a different sense of when we feel a sense of release. When I make a point, or when I'm thinking, or when I'm working out a problem, it's like there's a certainty when I feel like I've gotten a certain understanding and I relay it and I speak it. There's a certain joy to having to adjust myself and adjust my mind and my attention, and all throughout my day or our day, the way that we relate with people, it demands a relationship where we feel that we don't have to stay in a certain static, stationary way of being. There's a flow to how we're supposed to operate in the world, because everything's flowing, everything's changing. And I think our coming to terms with that reality in our beliefs, and how if we don't have a belief system that it coincides with the constant flow, there's going to be a sense of frustration and strife. And it's my belief that I assume that a lot of people at some point, in America, have some run-in with spirituality or religion, especially in the South. Now this is becoming more and more less common, but in my lifetime it seemed to be very, very common. And I used to always think or feel like uncertain about whether my path was similar to someone else's. And I always was struck by the question of whether my experience of anything coincides with someone else's. And I think our ability to have some sort of common experience is what gives us a sort of stability in our society. And the more our society flies off the handles, where we feel like we have an uncommon reality. And I actually like to be able to try to be able to exercise myself and seeing the world through other people's eyes the best I can. In my own story, in my own struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder and depression and everything, there were deeper issues at hand, deeper things that the symptoms of my compulsions and obsessive thoughts, the answer to or curing obsessive compulsive disorder, it's a relationship with my own humanity. It's a relationship with if I'm not sufficiently dealing with things that are in my life and that are in me, they will manifest themselves in certain ways. And sometimes what we think are negative symptoms are actually our mind and body trying to bring a solution to something. And we think it's a problem because it's interfering our sense of what we want our life to be. We want to be able to just to do what we want and float along and be happy and stuff. And but there's so many issues in our lives that demand our attention and our ability to have a belief system where we can feel at liberty of processing things inside us and develop a confidence in our ability to do that. That, to me, is what defines, I think, a authentic relationship with our own belief systems. And so I'm trying to stay aligned here, but I'm kind of, the nature of my mind is to be kind of miscellaneous. It seems to me that we lack an ability to have an authentic relationship with our own belief systems, to challenge with respect what we believe. And therefore, we have a very weak spiritual fabric to our society that we can't withstand being tested. When something comes and tries us, our immediate response is something is to take offense or to feel like we're being at war, essentially. And it's my really, in my own life, having to sort of work through my own civil war within myself and being able to confront what I think are the true places of understanding within my own self regarding my own beliefs. That has been the domain of how I've been able to kind of iron out my relationship with the world, essentially. That it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people that would be me, or if a lot of people could live my life, their relationship with religion would be to hate it and to reject it. And I feel like even though I understand that, honestly. I understand atheists. I understand this sort of irrational complexity that if a spiritual worldview is accurate, it's almost so complicated that it burdens the mind, But to me, I feel like that's an incorrect way of approaching it, because when if you're a hyper rational person, you're essentially viewing life with only. You're attempting to view life through your left hemisphere, your more rational way of looking at the world, or rational scientific lens, and we have our right hemisphere. It's a little more imaginative, a little more narrative or oriented. And to me, when you merge the two, that's where you really get, I think, a fusion of your ability to reason, but also to access the subjective parts of us that really make us human, that really gives life its color. And there came a time in my life regarding Christianity that I began to see people falling away that I saw in middle school, going to a Christian private school and stuff, and then later on in public school, like seeing people just gradually it wasn't really like a thing they believed. And even for myself, I didn't know how much I actually believed it. I felt like I had something, but there was a lot of it was wrapped up in my own ego, and I didn't know this, but my OCD was actually, like I was saying to begin with, my ego was involved in it. When you are trying to control things, when you're trying to, when you're obsessing about things, there's something that your ego is involved in, trying to construct the world and project your own sense of order, rather than cooperate with the order that's trying to establish itself and really process what's going on inside of you. Well, what I didn't realize was that my own inner battles that began to emerge were kind of parts of spiritual questions. And when I bottomed out in college, when I really, by then I had really been able to channel a lot of my efforts into music and become one of the better guitar players around, I really began to privately be taken over by a lot of just inner obsessions. I do intend on making a special on this, but it's just been on the back burner, and I just felt like there was this area of defect inside me that desperately I wanted to conceal and not confront. And eventually, when I really began to see how much it was destroying my life, I honestly thought my life was over. I thought I was like a ruined person. And it was one of those things where I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually really see if there's anything really to this Christianity thing. And what I don't want to be cheesy because my whole story about my life and my spiritual journey is very complex, and it's not so. There's some people that like, a flash of light happens and all of a sudden their life opens up and everything's awesome. And that's actually wasn't my story. A lot of people thought I was this great Christian guy, and I wasn't. I was a broken man that was trying to make sense of the world and trying to make sense. And still, there's a lot of things that I'm still trying to make sense of and that I'm still growing in. And I became very intense with it, with my spiritual path. And when I began to discover was that everything about Christianity that I thought was true, but not in the way that I thought. There were some things that actually weren't true, I would say, in some ways, to be kind of trying to not confuse everyone that is listening to me right now. But I had to process spiritual things, and I began to read and study the New Testament a lot. And what I discovered in the writings of the Apostle Paul was this view of human nature, of this kind of inner war that we have. And I had never heard no one really talk about this much, but he was describing exactly how I felt, the good that I would do, I can't do. Like, it's like what I want to do, I don't do. And there's this weird relationship he describes that if you haven't heard or read, some of Paul's writings, it sounds confusing, but humans were very strange creatures. We're much more complicated than we think, or that we want to think. And sometimes doing good and being good is not nearly as simple as we think. To really be good, I think, requires us to not do it in a superficial way. And so there's a great Jung quote about, I'd rather be whole than good, because to just aim for goodness could get us into a lot of trouble. In fact, all the evil of the world is often done in the name of goodness, and not until you have a relationship with yourself where you are aware of your ability to do evil, and you're more watchful of yourself, can you actually develop a real sense, a real awareness of what it means to be good. And you begin to view your own wholeness in the totality of who you are as more important than just being, superficially moral. You begin to have a full picture of the fullness of who you should be as a person, and then it breaks out into all these different areas of being a well-rounded individual that's fully alive. And so I've wanted to actually change gears with this podcast to begin to relay a lot of these fascinating kind of perspectives of our spiritual life that I've had some really interesting experiences with. And it's weird. I find there's truth in almost every belief system. I'm able to, with being able to feel and experience the grace of God in a way that is, I feel like processes me and the good that I have and rightly judges the evil. That gives me the ability to actually accept other people and not be afraid of their ideas or their beliefs. I can almost look at and experience almost anything and be able to appreciate if there's any good there, the good that is there. So with that said, today is Easter, and I was doing a lot of writing today, and I was just reflecting on how much our understanding of Christianity is detached from, I think, the original tangible experiences that kind of defined its genesis that us as believers are celebrating. And in my own life, as I begin to relay my story a little more to you guys, there is a huge difference between a religious structure that has the mechanisms of oppression within it, in condemnation, in even to superficial ideas that repress the development of who we are. There's a big difference between that and a belief system that actually allows you to experience the mystery of reality, the mystery of being. And the core of that is the mystery of God himself. And so in my own life, Christianity, can be very easily panned as being, it begun with, this legend of this story of people that made a legend out of this normal guy. Well, the problem with that is, even though I understand, and I can understand that, is that what sets Christianity apart from a lot of legends or myths or even religions is this idea of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. I like the term the Holy Ghost. I like the darker ideas of God. I hate being just so like religious. I like just going after like the deep, weird, spooky, language of religion. That's where all the good, interesting ideas lie, I think. At least to me. There's a tangible experience that unlocks the ability for the individual to experience this weird paradox, is that as we feel we're becoming more and more aware of who we are, and we see ourselves for more of who we are, we're actually seeing God for more of who he is. And it's because we're created in his image. There's this weird paradox that as we see God more clearly, we see ourselves more clearly. And there is this idea in Christianity of that I feel like it's been lost, of the glorification of believers, or the divination of man, which is almost like it's man becoming part of the divine. Now, a lot of this language, people assume a lot of kind of New Age kind of kind of association. And I'll be honest with you, there are actually some ideas in New Age belief I find very, very helpful, very actually interesting, and actually courageous and bold. I think there are some areas where I don't agree, but I actually feel like there's this notion of becoming more than just a normal human. It's just eating, pooping, reproducing, and sleeping, and that's it. To me, my idea and what I've experienced, what I'm wired for, is a belief system that expands me into the mystery of being and the mystery of the limits of consciousness, if there are any limits of consciousness, And so my story of OCD is almost like me being wired for a life that I've had to find what exactly are the ideas and the conceptions of being that I can pour myself into and channel myself into, and begin to experience life in all of its depth, and become the person that I've always felt I was, but didn't have permission to be. And feeling that person begin to emerge. And, I've actually been really, really seeking a lot of answers to things, probably over 20 years. It's been a long time. So the things that I have to say, I have a lot of things to say. And so this is just kind of part one that I just kind of want to introduce a new perspective. So I'm using the celebration of Easter to kind of begin to switch gears and just begin to release some content that is kind of throwing away the ego and just kind of giving what I got, man. I want to be a little less ambitious when it comes to my delivery and just focus on the ambition of my actual ideas and thoughts and conceptions of things. And I've been really sitting on a lot of things that I want to say. And so really what I want to get through with in this first part is that I feel like the West has to recover the original definitions of religious language, the original essence of Christianity that is not. I feel like when we say Christianity, honestly, a lot of it's a lot of negative connotations. I mean, I honestly kind of dislike it myself. I mean, I kind of, when I think of it, listen, you got to understand this. A lot of my OCD was actually stemming from an ideology or an approach to the instincts, whether it be sexual, whether it be anger, whether it be in relation to the ego and pride. There was an attitude towards the instincts that actually inflamed the instincts, made them worse. That's something that Paul says, that the strength of sin is the law. That's like the more you tell someone to not do something, the more they actually want to do it. And so human nature is filled with this interesting and fascinating kind of paradoxical notion that a lot of times what we are compelled to do, if it's not done with the right posture, the right mechanics, with the right alignment, it actually is destructive to our own ability to actually accomplish that. It's more important that we have the right nature of how we do good than doing good, which flies in the opposite kind of mentality of what I think a lot of our belief system is. We're so like results oriented. I view the error of our modern religious ways of thinking. It's almost like Christianity in the modern mind, in the way it's been kind of taught, is that it's so kind of results oriented, and it's very with the end in mind. And I likened it to a movie that Christians almost like fast forward through the process and just want the result. So it's a movie that they don't watch except for the end. They just want the end, when the end that they actually, what defines the end is the process. When you have a story, a narrative, it's actually the process that really makes the end have its definition and its potency and power. And the problem with religious belief is that if we're too results oriented, we cut ourselves off from the actual process, that natural flow I was talking about earlier. That our beliefs should not be static and stationary, unmovable objects, but they are truths that, if they're really true, you don't have to hold on to them in a certain way. When you really get a truth, it remains true within you, and you can like suspend yourself and rest in those beliefs, to where life can. You have a sort of detachment from the need to control things, and truth kind of sticks to you, because you yourself are allowing yourself to be true and remain true in the nature of who you are. And that naturally attracts truthful ideas. And it becomes something that you don't merely have doctrine that is true per se. I mean, there is doctrine, which we'll get into that, later on at some point. But the nature of how it affects you. That's why people aren't convinced. If you are just moral without the actual process that goes deep, people aren't convinced. you're a do-gooder. You're kind of a soulless puppet of virtue, as opposed to being it's like virtue for the sake of virtue, as opposed to it being the result. It's almost like if you look at it's you're planting a crop. In order to really get the crop, you just can't. You shouldn't just want the result. You should want to have good soil. We want it to be able to the plant or whatever you're planting to be able to be enriched by the soil. You want the soil to be able to be treated to where across time you just don't deplete your soil. There's all this process to. If we're just results oriented, we're not seeing the whole nature of how that result exists in a good, natural way. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but to me, goodness in a person's character, we shouldn't want to be just good in a one-dimensional way, but in a very deep way that goes into the mystery of who we are, to where we're accepting the fullness of who we are. Everything that we have flows into each other. There's a totality. There's a wholeness. There's a animating life to who we are. We're not just 5 different people that we're trying to this person one time, this person, and I'm integrating the whole, every archetype, I guess, of the different shades of personality that are in me. And I'm able to be someone who's very conscious, very present, and that can do the right thing, not because I'm supposed to, but because I want to. That's real virtue. That's real goodness. You're less conscientious of yourself in one respect. You're not seeing yourself from the outside, admiring your own actions, but you're very, very aware and in tune with the process of who you are becoming. That I think is really associated with who we are. There's this weird paradox of who we are, and who we're becoming, and hopefully we're becoming a more authentic expression of what I think is the ultimate expression of our fullness, our full potential. So this is how I've kind of viewed, I think, our spiritual crisis, is that in order for us to be good, it actually drains us of psychological resource and drains us of who we really are, unless it's plugged into a deeper belief system that isn't just doing the right thing to do the right thing, as far as because the one's supposed to, because we want to, because we have learned that alignment of who we are, and it just so happens that when we are aligned, we really accept some of the deeper truths and spiritual realities, it naturally tends to put us together as a more integrated person. And there's a reason why there's the word disintegrate, when things come apart. And that's, to me, what I fear is happening with our mental conditions in society, is that as society is deteriorating, the individual psyche of people, is deteriorating. And we don't understand that it's this piecing together, integrating of our individual parts in a belief system where things flow with each other. There has to be a flow. And as far as my study of different religions and different philosophy and stuff, the thing that really makes Christianity to me it's not just a religion. It's that there's this idea of the Holy Spirit that is this flowing force, this flowing person, this flowing aspect of God that directs us into the depths of who we can be and who we are, and expands us as we learn the peace as we learn to cultivate the peace inside us, as we learn not to war with our own instincts, but we learn a higher dimensionality that isn't merely warring after the flesh, or warring after and trying to solve our instincts, but we're learning a higher mentality, a higher dimensionality of how we actually relate to being. And that's something that John the Baptist and Jesus Christ, their teachings and what they spoke about involved, and they called it the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, this higher government, this higher organization that is now with us and in us. And even if you're not a believer, I actually would say that I would hope this would fascinate you, because, let's just say that, like, I'm wrong, or that the belief system is wrong in some ways, and we're just in left field, that we're just believing some incredible stuff. Well, it speaks to human nature. It speaks to the mystery of human nature, and that there's a belief system that actually taps into human nature and taps into the nature of reality in a way that, at the very best, you can take from and learn all the best stuff from, and be open to its ideas, so that you can piece together your own version of it. In my own life, that's been kind of the best approach, because we have to see these things afresh. When we see them in light of tradition, and we see them in light of there's a dehumanizing and de-individuating kind of frequency. What I mean by that is that, our individual life, only we have that awareness of its value. And we can feel when ideas value it and when they don't. And too often religion, it feels like that it doesn't value our individuality. But the New Testament teaches the opposite, is that it has eternal value, and that it's our ability to reach our ultimate value and to experience our ultimate value. We have to surrender our own notion of it in order to let God animate inside us, so that we actually can have a greater understanding of who we are. We're almost like a lamp that we need light to enter into, so we really appreciate the ways that we can illuminate and at least serve the purpose that we're meant to have, not just doing things, but being. And so, not in my own understanding of these things, it's a very, very intricate path, very fascinating, detailed path that different belief systems actually have some very, very great things to add to it. I have a lot of controversial kind of views on things that I feel like that's one thing that I feel like people don't realize, that of all religions, Christianity actually opens up for like a lot of different interpretations and developments, and it's not nearly as rigid as we've actually made it to be. There is a necessity of some rigidity in some of the areas, because I feel like anything that has any coherent definition, has boundaries, And so there are areas that need that and that need our sort of rigid definition, but it serves the purpose of life ultimately. And that's what we need in the world today. We need belief systems that we are excited about, that gives us life, that we animate something deeper. And I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of my views of things and opening up my story to you guys. And, I'm working on a book right now and a lot of new songs that can communicate some of these subtleties that I feel like can really, really make a difference because they're the things that have made the difference in my life. And I'm actually uncomfortable not sharing them. Yeah, sharing them is probably the thing I'm the most comfortable with. I mean, anyone who knows me, it's like all you got to do is mention something remotely spiritual, and I'm on some tangent, or just mention Carl Jung, and I'm just, going to be there talking for an hour about depth psychology. Have a great week. I'll talk with you again soon. And this is the beginning of something new, something fresh, and I feel like I'm really excited about it. So, yeah, man, you guys take it easy. God bless.